Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for coming today. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Butterfly Blitz in 2022 again this year. Very excited to be working on this project again with CVC and the Riverwood Conservancy. And going to be talking a little bit today about timed surveys and how to do them, as well as where to input your data when you're finished. So with that being said, let's get to it. Who am I? My name is Derek Stone. I work as the Conservation and Program Manager at the Riverwood Conservancy in Mississauga. My main interest and the reason I love to do what I do is ecology. I love to learn about how different wildlife species interact, both with themselves and the rest of the environment around them. And for the sake of this project, I am very much still learning my butterflies. So if you're new to identifying butterflies, new to surveying butterflies, I promise you, you are in very good company. And yeah, still trying to learn as much as I can through this project. And that's what I love so much about this project is it's a really great way to learn. And of course, we're looking to learn as much as we possibly can about the butterflies in the Credit River watershed. But why butterflies? Why would we survey butterflies? Well, it's an excellent question, and there's quite a few answers to it. So the first is that they are what we call ecological indicators or indicator species. And what that means is that they're helpful for getting a sense of how everything else in an ecosystem is doing. So more or less, if you're getting a high abundance and a high diversity of butterflies in an area, usually that's indicative of a stronger ecosystem health. So things, if the butterflies are doing well, tends to be that other things are doing well as well. Now, conversely, if butterflies are not doing well, if you're not getting a lot of different species, or if the abundance of a given species is declining in some way, that usually points to some issues with the ecosystem, whatever that might be. But there's usually something kind of amiss there, and it's usually going to trickle down and affect some of the other species as well. Of course, we all know our native bees for being tremendous pollinators, but our butterflies also fulfill that role. So it's really nice to have a sense of how our pollinators are doing, particularly in an urbanized area. Butterflies are also an excellent food source for all sorts of different mammals, birds, fish. They do contribute quite a bit to the ecosystem in that regard. So it's a good idea to have a sense of how much abundance of butterflies you have that will contribute that way. We also consider butterflies to be model organisms. And what that means is that when we look at things like climate change or habitat fragmentation, butterflies give us a good sense of how other things are doing by affecting them. So again, very similar to being an indicator species, but they can also kind of give us a sense of what some of the primary problems with population decline in certain species might be. And additionally, they are sort of a symbol of insect decline in general. So we do know that insects are declining kind of worldwide and in a lot of areas quite heavily. But we just don't know enough about how much that decline is happening or to what extent that decline has hit the Credit River watershed. So we need more data. We want to know more and more about how butterflies are doing and how that relates to how insects are doing in general, and of course to the overall ecosystem. So by getting good data on butterfly populations, we'll be able to get a sense of just how well things are going in other areas as well. And that, of course, would be the end goal of the project. So what are we asking of you this summer in regards to time surveys? Well, we are asking for you to commit to a minimum of 4 time surveys throughout the summer or throughout the span of the Butterfly Blitz at 15 minutes minimum. So they can be as long as you like. They could be 2 hours, 3 hours if you're really gung-ho about butterflies, but at least 15 minutes is what we're asking for these surveys. And they can be conducted anywhere in the Credit River watershed. So I'll show you a map of that shortly, but if you are outside of the Credit River watershed, it just means that you have to conduct your surveys within the Credit River watershed. It doesn't mean that you're excluded from doing anything. And then to submit all of those surveys to the eButterfly website, and I'll show you exactly how to do that, as well as submitting all your surveys to CVC, and we'll show you how to do that too. So that's what we're going to be doing today, and that's kind of a rundown of exactly what we're going to be looking for this project. So how do I do a time survey? It is easy. This is actually one of my favorite types of surveys because, to be totally honest, it's just like going for a walk and looking for butterflies. And that's basically what it boils down to. So I'm going to go through some of the specifics as we move forward, but it is very easy. And you can check out on the CVC website for some resources as to how to get started. And this is what that looks like. So if you head to cvc.ca/butterfly blitz, this is where you can get all sorts of information on the Blitz. You can enroll, get involved, all sorts of interesting information here on this page. But if you look at the right hand side of the page there where it says downloads and resources, you're going to want to click that to get some of our time survey information. So once you click that, this is the page you're going to see. And there's a whole lot of cool things here. At the bottom there, you can see identifying butterflies anatomy, which is really helpful in learning your butterflies a little bit better, as well as some responsible observation techniques. We'd love if you could take a look at that. But for the purposes of this presentation, we're going to be looking at the Butterfly Blitz species checklist up there at the top, the Butterfly Blitz time survey data sheet, as well as the grid squares for butterfly observations. So you can click on those and download them to kind of have them as a resource as you move forward. And we're going to take a look at exactly what those grid squares for butterfly observations are right now. So this is a map of the Credit River watershed. And again, if you live outside of this Credit River watershed, it does not mean that you can't participate. You can certainly participate. You just need to make sure that you're in the Credit River watershed at the time of your time survey. So you can head to Riverwood, or you can head to, if you're up in like the Orangeville area, anywhere in like the Western Brampton area, lots of different spaces where you can conduct your surveys, certainly. So it's going to need to be somewhere in this vicinity, and just where it's reasonable and safe to do so. Make sure that you're taking your safety into account with all that's going on right now. And this can also mean that you just do something in your own backyard. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's the great thing about time surveys is they can really take place anywhere. Don't worry about walking in a straight line when you're on your site. You can wander as you decide to, but just try to make sure you're not looking at the same butterflies more than once. You want to make sure that you're accurately representing the amount of butterflies that are in that area at any given time. Now, one of the interesting things about this map is that you'll see that some of those alphanumeric numbers there or digits there have blue borders on them. And what that means is it's an area within the Credit River watershed where we don't have as much data as we'd like. So if you happen to be in that sort of Western Brampton area, or maybe you're up in Elora or sort of Northern Caledon, Orangeville, you're in a really good place to be able to contribute some additional data to the Butterfly Blitz this year. Of course, if you're in an area where there's not a blue border around the number there, um, it's not to say that data would be unimportant. Certainly, we want to get as much data as we possibly can, and we want to make sure that our data is consistent from year to year to year. So pretty much wherever you are within the Credit River watershed, you're in a good place to be able to contribute data to this project. But if you find yourselves in some of those areas with those blue borders, that's in an area where we don't have a heck of a lot of data already. And this is the time survey data sheet. You're going to need to fill out one of these for every time survey that you do. And it's fairly simple in premise. There's not a whole lot that's terribly difficult about this, but just as a rundown, you're going to need your participant name at the top there, your time survey number. That could just be, if you're doing 4 time surveys, it could be 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever the case might work for you. The date and location, as specific as you can get, is great. The number of people coming out with you, the number of surveyors, that's including you. So it could be 1, it could be 5, it could be, however many people decide to come out with you at the time. Recording your start time and end time is very important for a time survey, as you might imagine, and the number of your species seen at the end, as well as whether your checklist was submitted to eButterfly. And the answer, of course, to that should always be yes, because that's something we're asking you to do for this project. The temperature, as close to accurate as you can possibly get is great. In the wind box here, of course, there are different weather patterns that are great for butterflies and some that are not so great for butterflies. So cataloging the weather a little bit is really helpful. And this is really done a little bit intuitively. So when you're looking at the wind here, there's calm, light air, light breeze, gentle breeze, moderate breeze. If you, like me, are not great at understanding the difference between what light air or gentle breeze is, there's a little piece down there at the bottom describing what the Beaufort scale really is. So down there where it says, 0, calm, smoke rises vertically versus 2, a light breeze, wind felt on face, leaves rustle, veins begin to move, that sort of thing. It gives you a sense of exactly what that means. In terms of cloud cover, that's a little bit of an estimate. You're going to look right up into the sky and give yourself sort of a general percentage of what percent of that sky is covered. And again, as close to accurate as you can is great. Precipitation, there really shouldn't be any when you're out there. That's you don't necessarily want to be looking for butterflies when it's raining out. So there's really only 3 options here. Either there's no precipitation, there's a little bit of mist or fog, or it's a very light drizzle, because you can sometimes get some butterflies in that kind of weather as well. If you could choose whether your pictures were submitted to iNaturalist, that would be wonderful. And also you could record a map of your route during your time survey. So you could just even kind of scribble that on the back of the time survey data sheet, or include it in some other way. You certainly don't have to attach a route map to the data sheet, but if you choose to, it can be helpful in giving us a sense of exactly where you were. So that's all it is for the time survey data sheet. We want to make sure that that's filled out as accurately as possible, and that one of these data sheets is filled out for every survey that you do. Okay, so that's just kind of the gist on our time survey data sheets. So what else do we need before we start our time surveys? Well, we have our species checklist on the right. And again, this is one of those documents that you can download from the CVC website. And it'll give you a sense of some of the more common or even some of the uncommon species that reside within the Credit River watershed. And a lot of these species are things that you might find at different times of year throughout the butterfly blitz. So it's a good idea to keep this on hand while you're out there doing your time surveys, because it'll give you a sense of how common or uncommon things might be, might help you with some identification, and it'll give you a sense of how to maintain your observations as you go, and just make sure that you're not winging it or having to remember anything. So you're going to want to bring that for sure. What else to bring is, of course, your time survey data sheet that we just went over, as well as a pencil or pen. It's a good idea to bring your watch or a smartphone, just kind of for telling the time, because time is an important part of a time survey, as well as a butterfly ID guide if you have one, just so that you can kind of get a sense of what things might be as you're out there, might help a little bit. And of course, you could always bring binoculars or a smartphone camera to try and capture a better look at some of those butterflies, or to get potentially a couple of pictures that might help you to identify them a little bit later. And then you conduct your survey, which is the fun part. So this is where you're going to record your start time. You're going to set a timer, or just keep an eye on the time. But again, you want to be as accurate as you possibly can with the timeline here. You're going to take note of the weather on that time survey data sheet, of course. And then you just go for a walk and look for butterflies. And this is why I love this type of survey so much, because it's really just a kind of a fun time to get out there in nature and look for butterflies wherever you can. Again, you can kind of change your route. You can go back and forth. You can have like a winding route, or you can just be in your backyard, as long as you're careful not to count the same butterflies more than once. So fill out the checklist as you go. Of course, you can always use binoculars. A lot of people use binoculars for things like bird watching, and that's usually it, actually. So this is an activity where you can certainly put those binoculars to additional use in identifying butterflies from a range. And then, of course, you can take photos if possible. It really helps for me in identifying butterflies to be able to take a photo of what I'm seeing and then kind of be able to compare it later. So to have a bit of a lasting idea of what exactly I saw and what some of the specifics of that butterfly were can be really, really helpful in later identification if you can't identify it right off the bat. And just again, try not to count the same butterflies as you move. Try to make sure that everything you're getting a count of is a unique butterfly of some sort. So you might be asking why time surveys, and there's a couple of reasons for that. And the first is that it's a fairly easy to do survey, right? It's fairly minimal input. It really is just kind of going for a walk in the woods or in a field or wherever in your local park and getting a sense of what's there. And that's really helpful, particularly for those who are just starting with the hobby. However, it's also a survey method that allows us to get a sense of exactly how much effort was put into the survey. So how much time was actually spent looking for butterflies? That's a really, really important thing to know. And so there's a big difference between going outside for 5 minutes and seeing no butterflies versus going outside for 2 hours and seeing no butterflies. And to that effect, having no butterflies is still really important data. So if you head out on your time survey and you are seeing very, very little, let's say you go for 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever the case might be, and you see zero butterflies, that's not a wasted effort at all. It's really important that that effort be recorded actually, because it tells us that there are no butterflies there. And there's, again, a big difference between having no butterflies in an area and not knowing if there's any butterflies in an area. So those uh, those counts are actually really, really important. Those surveys, if you do head out there and you do a time survey and you get nothing, it's really important that you put that data down and send it in because that's really, really important for us. It really doesn't matter how far or how fast you go for a time survey, and that's one of the other benefits is that anyone can really do it. You can do it from your backyard, you can do it with family, you can head out to a local park, you can go out and make an afternoon of it. But it really doesn't matter how far or fast you go because it really is about the time in a given area. The other nice thing about time surveys is that you don't need to take pictures. Again, they're really good to have. It's really nice to have that picture for when you're trying to identify later on, but realistically, you don't need the pictures to be able to make the time survey data count, and that's really helpful. So a lot of reasons why we've decided on time surveys, but really they allow us to get a good sense of how much effort was put into the survey and how many butterflies were yielded as a result. So once you're done all these surveys, where are you going to submit them? Well, you're going to submit them to two places. Again, the first one is to CVC, and you can hand that in at the actual Butterfly Blitz wrap-up event, which is usually sometime in September, or it can be mailed to the CVC head office, care of Laura Timms, or it can be scanned and emailed to Laura Timms at the email address laura.timms@cvc.ca. If you can get that data to Laura Timms, you're in pretty good shape. The next thing we're going to do is send it into eButterfly, which is a citizen science website that catalogs butterfly data and allows us to kind of congregate all that data in separate projects, very much like iNaturalist, but specifically for butterflies. So we're going to show you exactly how that works right now. Okay, and here we have ourselves on the eButterfly website. That's e-butterfly.org. And the first thing we're going to have to do here is sign up. And it is a very, very quick sign up process. For those of you who are worried about having to put in a lot of information, it's literally just your username and confirming a password. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now because I've already got my username and password set up. So I'm going to sign in. And that'll bring you to the main page again here in just a second. And what we're going to be doing is looking up here at all these kind of sub settings up here. And the first things we're going to do is hit projects. So when we hit projects, that's going to open up a bunch of these different projects in the area. So these are different organizations who are looking to identify different butterflies within a separate geographical range. And luckily, right here, we have the CVC Butterfly Blitz 2022 all set up already. If you're coming to this a little bit later, it might be kind of bumped down a little bit, and you can always just use the search bar here to search for that. So we're going to do that now just to show you. And we're going to click on this. So once that's done, the only thing you need to do here is click on Join Project. So I'm going to do that now, and you'll see the number pops up to 2 now. Now this is, you can see a lot of kind of zeros here, and that's because the project has not begun yet. But once this gets rolling, you'll see all sorts of different numbers pop up here with people kind of populating their time surveys and whatnot. So after we're done that, we're going to go back up to the top, and we're going to hit on Submit here. So once we hit that Submit, this is where we're going to be able to put in our timed survey. Now, the first thing we do here is identify exactly where we did our timed survey. So this is a pretty simple little page here because all of this is filled out for you, and all you need to do is click on where you observed your butterfly. So I'm going to zoom in right here and say that I observed some butterflies at Riverwood, which is going to be right here. So I'm going to click right here, where I started my butterfly walk, and automatically everything kind of gets populated right over here. So it just makes it really easy for you there. And I'm just going to hit on next right here. Oh, locality, I'm going to put in Riverwood and hit next. So here's where you just need to identify a little bit of information, but when. So it'll automatically have this incidental observations marked. That's not what we're doing today. That's if you found a butterfly out in the wild somewhere and you just want to report it. But we're doing an intentional timed survey here. So we are going to click on timed count. So again, that's a survey where we know the time that we're out, but maybe not the distance or area covered. So we're going to click on the observation date, which I'm just going to put today. This is April 17th. And the start time, we'll say that I went out at 9 o'clock in the morning and ended at, let's say, 9:45 in the morning. And your party size, so however many people went out there with you. In this case, it was just me heading out in the morning to look for butterflies. And my remarks here would be maybe a little bit about the weather or something like that, but I don't think there's much you need to put here. It's certainly not a required field. If it was like raining, maybe slightly for parts of the walk, I might put that in, or had some unexpected weather, anything like that. But other than that, we're going to hit next. And here's where we get to actually show exactly what species we found on our walk. So in my 45-minute walk, I'm going to say that I found a couple of different species. This is all kind of hypothetical, but so what you do is you click this to add the species. And what species did you see? Well, I am going to say that I saw a mourning cloak because that sometimes happens earlier in the season. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to click just one. And if I have any pictures of it, I can add those here where it says add images. You just open that up and choose a file and upload it. I don't have any at the moment, so I'm just going to move on. But the basis of the record here would be either site, collected. We're not collecting anything today, certainly during the butterfly blitz. So we're not going to hit collected. If you find roadkill, that is something you can report because it still helps us to identify the data with that specific butterfly population. But for the most part, most of what people are going to be putting in there are going to be site or photograph. And in this case, I don't have a photo, so I'm just going to click site. I saw it. The data usage, just keep that as public. And if you have any field notes, you can certainly expand this to show, a little bit about the specifics of what you found. Now, like I said, am pretty new to this, so I don't really know the differences between the males and females a lot of the time, but I could tell you, if I found a caterpillar or some eggs or a chrysalis or anything like that. So you can kind of identify not just the butterfly form, but if you see some caterpillars, you can certainly count those as well. And again, here would be some field notes. So you could put anything in here like a little bit windy in the morning, or maybe it started to rain towards the end and that kind of made you leave a little bit early. But whatever the case might be, I'm going to say that I found one mourning cloak of unknown sex, and the public data usage and the basis of record was site. Okay, so very, very simple like that. If I found something else, I could just click this here and add another species. So let's say I also found let's say there was an early monarch passing through. So I'm going to click that. Let's see, we found two of them. the basis of record. Let's say this time I did get a photograph. That would be very easy to add, just a couple of images there. And again, you could expand this down to whether you found a caterpillar or eggs or whatever the case might be, and some additional field notes. You're going to do this with every single butterfly that you find on your time count. So make sure that you fill it out entirely. And then when that's all done, you're going to go right down here to the bottom of the screen where it says, I'm submitting a checklist of all butterflies I observed at this location, date, and time. You're going to click yes, because you're going to do everything you found on that time survey. And when you're done, you're going to hit this finish button down here. Now, I'm not going to put this in because this is a hypothetical situation, but once you hit that finish button, it'll come up and say, thank you. You've put in your data and you're good to go. So that is the gist of how to put your data into eButterfly. And it's actually kind of fun. You get a chance to kind of provide some of the details of your time survey to the site and to other people looking to learn more about the butterflies in our area. So just as a recap, what we're asking for is 4 timed surveys throughout the summer or throughout the timeline of the Butterfly Blitz. And we're asking for those surveys to be a minimum of 15 minutes each and anywhere in the Credit River watershed. They can be absolutely anywhere as long as it's in the Credit River watershed. And also to submit all of those surveys to the eButterfly website, like we just learned, and to submit those surveys to CVC as well. And you can do that by sending them to Laura Timms, and that email address is posted right here, laura.timms@cvc.ca. So thank you so much for being here and learning a little bit about our time survey process and how to make that happen. We really, really appreciate you taking part in the Butterfly Blitz in 2022. We're hoping to get some really good data this year to be able to supplement the data that we've had in prior years and make some really cool calculations and determinations about the populations of butterflies within the Credit River watershed. So thanks so much again for being here. We hope to see you out there on the trails. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thanks very much and have a great day.